Let's now discuss the next important element of poetry, and it is tone. What is tone? Tone is typically translated as lehja in Urdu. Yes, this is exactly what we mean. But let me explain it, and there is a definition given over here. What is tone? The attitude or feelings. The attitude or feelings of the poet towards his subject are called tone. I mean, what a writer feels about what he has written is called tone. What is the attitude of the writer himself about the thing that he has written? That's called as tone. I mean, let me tell you one thing, kids. The meaning of the poem or any piece of text is not only in the words. It's not only in the words. The meaning of the poem or a piece of literature is not only in the lines or the sentences. There is meaning beyond the words, above the words, that you need to keep in mind. That if you think that you have read a poem and you know the meaning of every word, you know the literal meaning of every sentence, and if you feel that now you have a full understanding of the poem, you are mistaken. Meaning is beyond the lines too. The meaning is also beyond the words. Sometimes a poet says one thing, but he means the other. How can we say that a poet says one thing and he means the other? So it is something that we judge or guess from the tone of the poem, the tone of the lines that he has written. Let me quote an example from Ahmad Faraz. And there is a very famous couplet by Ahmad Faraz in which he says one thing, but he means the other. For example, let me quote the couplet. He says, उम्र भर कौन निभाता है ताल्लुक इतना, उम्र भर कौन निभाता है ताल्लुक इतना, ए मेरी जान के दुश्मन तुझे अल्लाह रखे. On the face of it, the poet seems to be praying for the enemy. And if you think that's the meaning of the poem, you are mistaken. Basically, this couplet is a sarcasm against his friends, the poet's friends. He says, my enemies are better than my friends, because my enemies have been steadfast in their animosity against me more than my friends. My friends are not as steadfast in their friendship with me as are my enemies in their animosity against me. So basically this poem is bitter. It has a bitter tone. It has bitter feelings, sarcasm, and on the face of it, it seems to be a sympathetic poem, expressing a desire for reconciliation with enemy. Not at all. That's not what it means, remember. So this is why we say that for understanding a poem, you need to understand the tone of the poem. What are the feelings? What are the attitudes of the poet towards the lines, the poem that he has written? Once you grip and you comprehend the tone, attitude or feelings of the poet towards his subject matter, only then you can be in a position to understand the poem in real sense. So this is why, poets are sometimes very difficult to understand for ordinary people. Even in daily life, remember, we make use of tone. And most of the time people do understand our tone, because in daily life communication, tone can be easily judged through our intonation, the pitch of our voice, and also through our facial expressions, through our body language. So if somebody says, you are a genius, so it doesn't mean that he actually means it. Sometimes it can be irony. It can be an irony. It can be a taunt. Somebody has failed to do something, a simple thing, so at that time you can sarcastically, in an ironical fashion, you can say, you are an Einstein. You are a genius. So that is not what the speaker means. Speaker means exactly the opposite. So irony, for example, is something that we make use of in our daily life frequently, and that is also the meaning of irony, or sentences containing irony actually depends upon understanding of the attitude or the tone or the feelings of the speakers in daily life, remember. But picking tone or the attitude of the speakers in daily life is easier, because we know that the facial expressions, that voice, everything, the body language can help us to pick the tone. But in poetry, it might sometimes be troublesome. It might not be easy for us to pick the tone. So this is why we say that picking the tone is absolutely important, remember. Connection between language and emotion. Now, I've just told you language is a carrier of emotions. I've just told you that language is not something that is simple and straightforward and easy to understand. Language is always connected with emotions. And sometimes the literal meanings of the words do not actually contain the emotion, but the extra emotion has to be perceived, has to be understood with the help of tone or with the help of feelings or emotions. So this is something that you can, that you need to keep in mind, remember. So language always carries emotions with it. So don't only go for the literal meaning of the words. Also be aware of the extra emotions that words or lines or sentences carry with them. And then second thing is that I've just shared with you, meaning does not reside in words only. I mean, not only, words do not contain the meaning only, remember. These are not words that express the meaning only. The tone, the attitude, and so many other things, remember, they can actually convey the meaning as well. Tone gives energy to words. We know it very well, you know. So if there is no tone, there will be no energy. So when you say something, for example, if I say, you can win this match. Let's talk about the literal tone. If I'm telling somebody and say, you can win this match, see, the tone is different. I'm talking about the voice tone. The tone is, you can win this match. This is one way of saying, you can win this match. This is another way of saying it, you can win this match. So this is another way of, see, words were the same. The sentence was the same, but the energy, the emotions that each sentence contained was different. So the last sentence was extremely motivating, extremely encouraging, extremely inspiring, extremely confidence building, but as compared to the first one. So see, energy, emotions are not just carried by the words, it's the tone of the speaker in real life and also the tone of the writer in literature that can convey meaning or emotions or energy. So you need to keep that in mind, remember. Daily life communication and tone, I've just given you example. In daily life, we make use of tone on regular basis, and you need to understand, sometimes some people say something funny, something humorous, but the listener fails to pick the tone, the attitude of the speaker towards what he has said. So he may not be able, the listener may not be able to understand the humor, the fun in the sentence that somebody says, and in this way he may miss the joke. So jokes, some serious jokes are actually heavily relying upon tone. So you know, some people say things in a very serious fashion, and I mean they say something funny. Some speakers, some people say things in a very funny way, so in a very serious way, and this serious way of saying funny things sometimes leads to misinterpretation by the listeners, and listeners fail to pick the element of humor, the element of fun, and they may take it seriously. This is how miscommunication takes place. Misunderstanding or misinterpretation takes place. So without understanding the tone, the attitude, or the extra emotions or the feelings that are carried by the words, you'll not be in a position to understand what the writer has said or what the speaker has said. That's why it is absolutely important for you not to only understand the words and the sentences per se, but also try to pick the tone of the speaker, whether in real life or in literature. So this is something that you need to understand. Okay, now let's talk about importance of recognizing tone. I've just told you that tone carries the true meaning. No need to talk about it any further. Tone determines and controls the meaning. I've just told you. You need to recognize the tone of the speaker, tone of the writer, tone of the poet, because the tone means the attitude. If you don't understand the attitude of the writer towards what he has written, you will never be able to understand the writing itself. If you don't recognize the tone of a poet towards the poem that he has written, you'll never be able to understand the poem itself. So this is something that you need to keep in mind, and that's why we say that it is very important to recognize tone. And in the end, we can talk about different kinds of tone: happy tone, sad tone, bitter, sarcastic tone, ironical tone, serious tone, humorous tone, inspirational or motivational tone, optimistic tone, pessimistic tone. Lots of tones are there. It's up to you to pick and understand the attitude of the speaker, the attitude of the writer, the attitude of the poet towards what they have written. So this is something that I hope you have understood. Let's come towards our next element of poetry, and it is mood. What is mood? Well, mood is not really difficult to understand. The mood in poetry is the same as the mood in real life. We talk about people's mood. We say he's in angry mood, he's in happy mood, he is in a sad mood, he's in a serious mood, he's in a funny mood. We can talk in the same way as humans have different moods. Poems also have moods. Let's define it for the sake of definition. What is mood? Overall atmosphere. Overall atmosphere or feeling of a poem is called mood. Overall atmosphere of a poem, overall feeling of a poem, is ambience of a poem is called as mood. I mean, when you read a poem, clearly after reading the poem, you can clearly feel, you can pick the atmosphere of the poem. Each line stokes a special kind of environment, mood, or atmosphere, at least in your imagination, in your mind. And by the end of the poem, you have had the whole mood in your mind, and you can understand the poem on the basis of whatever mood has been created or stoked by the words in the poem. So understanding the mood is definitely very important, and it is easy. Like picking the moods of the people, picking the mood of a poem is also not really difficult. Attitude, tone is far more difficult. Mood is easier as compared to tone. So overall atmosphere of a poem or feeling of a poem is called as mood. Determinants of mood. What are the things in a poem that determine, that shape, that control the mood? The first one is definitely diction, the choice of words that the poet makes use of in poetry. In a poem, they shape up, they control, they determine the mood of the poem. Let me give you an example of Daffodils again. If you read this poem Daffodils, you'll see that the poet has used certain words. Let me recall those words. He has used the word dance, jocund, gay, sprightly, glee, bliss. I have just quoted 6 words out of so many. Jocund, glee, gay, bliss, sprightly, dance. All these words show a very happy mood, a very cheerful mood, very positive mood. The vocabulary tells dance. Dance can never have a meaning or a feeling or mood of what we call as sadness, tragedy. Sprightly, Glee means joy, happiness. Jocund means happy. Gay means happy. All these words are about happiness, excitement. So clearly, one thing is for sure, the vocabulary used by the poet, the diction used by the poet in a poem can help us determine the mood of the poem. Second thing is setting. I've just told you, setting of the poem can also help us pick or understand the mood of the poem. Dark night, wintry autumn, gloomy night, gloomy evening, all of them give us a hint about sad, gloomy or pessimistic mood. That's very easy to understand that. Faizaman Faiz poem, Phir Koi Aaya. So that poem also has a very gloomy mood, very sad mood. On the basis of, we can pick that on the basis of the diction that Faizaman Faiz has used, and also on the basis of the setting that he has used. It's very last hours of night, extremely last. So you cannot expect something positive to happen at that time, traditionally at least. That's a literary tradition, remember. So this is why we can say that mood of the poem also depends upon the setting. In Daffodils, what is the setting? Lush green fields, blossomed daffodils, beautiful breeze blowing, cheerful breeze blowing, watery end, what he call as bay, and all of trees, bright sunny day, all of that, this setting conveys a single message: joy, happiness. So the mood of the poem depends upon diction as well as setting. The next one is tone. Yes, we have already discussed tone. So these are the three basic determinants of mood. What are the kinds of mood? Well, there's not much difference between mood in this sense and tone. So what are the moods? You can say happy mood, sad mood, angry mood, optimistic mood, pessimistic mood. You can talk about, serious mood. You can talk about humorous and funny mood. You can talk about inspirational mood. You can talk about so many other moods, remember. So same is the case here, remember. So there's happy, sad, tragic, serious, religious mood. So many types of mood, so many kinds of mood. It's easy to understand. I hope you have understood each and everything. And I hope that this discussion of elements of poetry has broadened your understanding of poetry. It has broadened your mental horizons in understanding of poetry. I hope that these elements of poetry, the knowledge of these elements of poetry will go a long way in your understanding and comprehension, appreciation and enjoyment of poetry. Thank you very much. And I have not given any critical questions at the end, because there was no space left here. I will send you the critical questions through WhatsApp groups, and then you'll be asked to answer those questions. Thank you very much. Hope you have enjoyed everything. Allah Hafiz.